And I think that's probably something valuable to look at in the context of where I'm at here in the northeast of the country, where you do have a large number of parishes that are closing. I think in Pennsylvania and New York alone, there were 900 closures in the last 10 years.
Right.
No, the Catholic Church is growing substantially in this country, but it's not in this sector.
Yeah, actually, it's funny you mentioned that because I was trying to think of parallels. Obviously, first world problems in the U.S. where we, you know, Archdiocese of New York still has 1 million, 2 million odd Catholics on paper, at least. But realistically speaking, that's probably your example is probably the closest thing that we can think of. And I remember it occurring to me I was in Rome last year, how a year is longer than we think, but 100 years is shorter than it feels like as far as the full flowering of history. So these things are protracted. We're thinking, okay, in the lifespan of America, 250 years, we see the North African church go from kind of hanging on to gone. And then you start to kind of understand what that might start to look like, where, oh, there's just these massive swaths of, I guess, secular population, for lack of a better term. In our time, it was Muslim conquest back then. Um, but but yeah, it's just interesting to think about, and I guess a little frightening, but also encouraging, I guess, that the church survives elsewhere, but just kind of tragic to have to reckon
So
with.
it becomes a study in exactly how does the church survive under difficult conditions? Because you're right, being able to contrast the 300 years between the church in Carthage being at its apex, near 700, near 1,000, where it's almost entirely extinct. That's the same difference between us and roughly the colonial era. Oh, like when George Washington is born and Ben Franklin is relatively young. It's a different world, but like we're still talking about something that's still familiar to us. If we're looking at the question of how to be able to have the church flourish and avoid its extinction, I think North Africa is probably a great study. There are other ones. Certainly the church in Nubia, modern Sudan, was very prevalent up until the 16th century and then was just quashed. And there's a situation that they're doing a lot of work in, Polish researchers trying to piece back together what the Nubian church was. Arabia, prior to the time of Muhammad, had a large number of Christian communities at Petra, at Najran, that all vanished. They were either exiled or executed. So it becomes a question of, okay, we see what happens when the church is not given what it's needed in terms of the ability to flourish in these regions. How can we apply that to our current situation where we do see the church growing some places and kind of falling off in others,
Yeah.
especially here in the United States?